3 local people, a church warden, a worshipper, and a mother whose last words were of love. Lucy Williamson, BBC News, Nice.
Well, I'm joined now by Nabila Ramdani, a French-Algerian journalist, columnist and broadcaster who specialises in French politics and Islamic affairs. Nabila, thank you for joining us here on BBC News. So, first off, let's just look at President Macron's reaction to events today. Just talk us through how you see this.
Well, before answering that, if I may, I would like to just, say that my primary thoughts are, of course, with the victims of disgusting terrorist murders, one that have caused outrage around the world, whatever your creed or indeed your background. And the great problem with discussions on contentious issues immediately after events like these is that everything can be very easily misconstrued. So I would hate to think that anything I might say that supports Muslims at such a horrendous time somehow sounds like I'm supporting these evil acts carried out by street criminals who have no right whatsoever to be twisting an entire religion and indeed an entire culture towards their own nihilism. Now, to answer your question, I think that President Macron's reaction today was very typical of the way he has been approaching this issue from day one. And that is to say that he primarily sees it as a military problem. His language is that of the general at the moment. And he thinks that by effectively flooding France with more soldiers and indeed by pursuing a crackdown on Muslim communities and institutions, then he can fight back, to put it in very blunt terms.
There has, and we've heard this, there's been this issue bubbling away in the background with a boycott from many Muslim countries, including Turkey. Is this what's playing into events that we've seen today?
Well, I think there have been, of course, the horrendous murder of the French teacher Samuel Paty, and indeed France's entire discourse and statements around, Islam in France, the place of Muslims in French society, and bearing in mind that France has the largest Muslim community in Western Europe, and a lot of them originate from former colonies such as Algeria and Morocco. And I think, the way the French establishment, as it were, has been portraying Muslims in general has been very unfair, as they depicted them as a whole as a problem. And that's exactly what the Macron administration has been doing by calling not only 5 to 6 Muslims in France, but also close to 2 billion Muslims around the world, saying that Islam is a religion in crisis around the world. Now, to give you a very good example of what happens in France, a man was shot dead in Avignon 2 hours after the Nice attacks, and reports in the French media immediately said that it involved a man who had been screaming Islamic slogans and that he was likely to be an Islamist. But it actually turns out to be a far-right member of a generation identity movement who has allegedly been making Nazi salutes just before he was shot dead by police, as he threatened to shoot a North African shopkeeper. Now, the point of all this is not tit for tat, but it's that these horrifically violent attacks invariably involve young men who have been radicalized and who bear no relation to the vast community
So Nabila, from that point, how do you then repair that relationship? Like you said, the majority of Muslims do not support what has been taking place. How do you bring the two communities together, the country together?
Well, in fact, I think there has been an awful lot of myths that have been constructed around the notions of free speech and secularism in France. And in fact, French laicite and secularism rightly respects religion, and French law rightly protects religious and cultural minorities. The problem is that hateful cartoons, as published by Charlie Hebdo, that they would actually and normally be considered illegal are somehow now being elevated to great symbols of modern France by the serving French government. And if we can look beyond the horrendous terrorist attack, I think that President Macron has acted in a manner that was rash and indeed unstatesmanlike, following the vile murder of Samuel Paty, who was beheaded by a Russian-born terrorist. Mr. Macron bizarrely made out that images portraying the prophet as a nude cretin with his genitals hanging out were somehow state approved and should be indeed displayed to school children as much as possible. And he has solely suggested this as a good thing in relation to Islam, but not other religions. And this is by definition, hateful cruelty. It is, in my view, astonishing that Macron is effectively embarking on a war with Islam, effectively over these cartoons.
Thank you. Okay. Sorry, Nabila, I just have to jump in. We've just run out of time. But thank you very much. Nabila Ramdani, thank you.